Today we are learning how to multiply fractions, mixed numbers, and decimals. The first thing we're going to look at is multiplying a whole number by a fraction. Remember, parentheses mean to multiply. So here we have negative 8 times 6/7. So what they tell us is that in this section here, you see the negative 8 times 6/7. You always multiply the whole number by the numerator, and then it's assumed that there's a 1 underneath that negative 8. So that's where they just get the 7, because 1 times 7 is 7. So negative 8 times 6 is obviously negative 48. Hopefully you know that. So we get negative 48/7. And when they say simplify, that means they want you to put it back into a mixed number. 7 goes into 48 6 times. 6 times 7 is 42. 48 minus 42 is 6/7, and then we cannot forget the negative sign. Another way to do that, so you're not doing shorthand. So if you're like, I don't know how to do that shorthand, well, you can take 48/7, and yesterday we learned how to change improper fractions into mixed numbers. So 7 goes outside the box, 48 goes under, 7 goes into 48 6 times, you get 42, you subtract, and you get 6. Now that 6 for the remainder is your numerator, and the outside number is your denominator, and you just can't forget the negative. So if you don't know how to do shorthand, that's how you would do it longhand. So on the next one, we have a whole number multiplied by a mixed number. Now if you remember from previous years, in order to change a mixed number to an improper fraction, you take the whole number, which in this case is 5, and multiply it by the numerator, which is 3, so you get 15, and then add the numerator of 1 to it. So 5 times 3 is 15, plus 1 is 16. So you get 16/3. So that would look like this: 5 times 3 plus 1. And you have to do the order of operations, so that tells us to multiply and then add. So then we multiply 2 times 16, because we multiply the whole number by the numerator, and we get 32. And then it's assumed there's a denominator of 1 there, so 1 times 3 is 3. Which we already multiplied, so you can cross out this because we already did that. Anyways, so now we're going to simplify. 3 goes into 32 10 times. 10 times 3 is 30. 32 minus 30 is 2, and we put it over 3. Or if you need to do longhand, which is fine, 32 goes under, 3 goes outside, we get 1, 3, subtract, bring down the 2, 3 doesn't go into 2 at all, 0 times 3 is 0, subtract, that number is the numerator, and the outside number is the denominator. Alright, so, so for example 2, we are multiplying and writing each answer in simplest form. We have a fraction times a fraction. They're not mixed numbers, so you just multiply straight across. The first thing you do is you multiply the numerators. The second thing you do is multiply the denominators. So if you look here, you have 1 times 6, because those are the numerators, and then you have 8 times 7, because those are the denominators. Then we're going to look for common factors, and in this case, your common factor is 2, so you can cross cancel. Okay, so if you want to write this out easier to see, you could do 1/8 times 6/7. And then it's easier to cross cancel because your common factor is 2, so 2 goes into 8 4 times, and 2 goes into 6 3 times, and then you multiply those numerators of 1 and 3, and get 3, and then you multiply 4 times 7 and get 28. Now remember, If you don't want to look for common factors, you can multiply this here and get 6 over 56, and then you can divide that by the common factor of 2 and get 328 still. So you can either simplify at the end or simplify before you multiply by cross-canceling. So again, we are going to, on B, multiply the numerators. I'm just going to put NUM because I don't want to write it out. And then we're going to multiply the denominators. So here it gives those, or we could write it out as negative 2/3 times 9/2. Okay, and then we're going to look for the common factors. And in this case, we have 2 common factors because we're looking diagonally. And 2 and 2 are common factors too, so we can say 2 goes into 2 once. And then 3 and 9 are common factors 3, so 3 goes into 3 once and into 9 3 times. And then we can multiply straight across and get 3 over 1, which is negative 3, because remember in the beginning there was a negative sign there. Or you can just do negative 2 times 9 is negative 18, and 3 times 2 is 6, and then divide 18 by 6, and you still get negative 3. Remember when you're multiplying two numbers, one negative gives you a negative answer, and 2 negatives gives you a positive answer. Okay, so on A, we have 2 times negative 51/100. So because there's one negative, we are going to have a negative answer, which is the product. The product is the answer to a multiplication problem, with 2 decimal places because we have 2 numbers to the right of the decimal. So if you were to multiply that out, you do 0.51 times 2, and you would get 2, and then 5 times 2 is 10, and because there's 2 decimals to the right, you would move that decimal 2 to the left, insert it, and put a negative. So that's negative 1.02. On B, you have 2 negatives. So, because you have 2 negatives, the product is positive. And you have 1, 2, 3 numbers to the right of a decimal point. So, we're going to move 3 decimal places. So, you're going to still work that out. 3.75 times 4. And you get 20, carry the 2, 30, carry the 3, and then get 15, and you have to move that 3 places left then, and you get 1.5. Alright, last example is Joy completes 1/20th of her painting each day. How much of her painting does she complete in a 7-day week? Well, here's a hint. For this lesson, all of it's been on multiplying. So if the whole lesson's on multiplying, you're probably going to multiply. So there are 2 numbers in this problem. I need my little pen. 1/20th and 7. Because there's 2 numbers, it's pretty obvious that those are the 2 numbers you're going to multiply, right? So we are going to multiply 1/20th times 7. Now you can either make that 7 or 7 over 1, whatever you prefer. Now we multiply the numerators together, so we have 1 times 7, and then we multiply the denominators together like they showed. Then we multiply. 1 times 7 is 7, 20 times 1 is 20. So she completes 7/20ths of her painting. Now, if you wanted to, for whatever reason, put that into a decimal, it would be 0.35, but then I will know that you probably use your calculator instead of just doing that simple math in your head. So you can do those 4 check it out problems to make sure you know how to do your math lesson, and my baby is crying, so I need to go.